this joint presentation from the ASCO Academic Affairs Committee in conjunction with the AOA's Council on Research. And as I may have mentioned, we have over 70 individuals attending this evening from institutions all over the country. That's fantastic. My name is Aaron Zimmerman. I'm a clinical professor at the Ohio State College of Optometry, and I'm the chair of the Academic Affairs Committee. And one of the tasks that we've been working on this particular committee is trying to encourage individuals to pursue graduate education. And some of the reasons for that, skip a slide here, are that the number of individuals with OD master's degrees or OD PhDs tends to be on the decline. So what you can see over on the left-hand side, this particular figure is broken up into public institutions and private institutions. And you can see these are the percent faculty at these institutions. And the majority of the faculty are ODs. And you can see several at the public institutions, there's a little bit higher percentage of individuals on faculty with PhDs, but pretty much since 2011, that percentage is going down. And then if you go over to the private institutions, you'll notice since 2003, the number of individuals with PhDs in those institutions or master's degrees in those institutions is dropping. And so this was identified nearly 10 years ago, and there's been several efforts to try to better educate students enrolled in optometry programs on what graduate programs are, what they might be able to do for you in your careers, and what you can do for the profession, for example. So anyway, the purpose of this talk this evening is to expose each of you to a more thorough description of the graduate degrees, what they are, what they mean, pathways on how to complete them, and the various opportunities which they can provide. Tonight, we're joined by Dr. Kelly Nichols. She's the Dean of the UAB Optometry School, and Dr. Heather Anderson at Ohio State. Dr. Nichols is going to provide us with the story of her pursuing a graduate degree and the amazing opportunities that is provided her with. Dr. Anderson is then going to provide you with background information regarding graduate degrees. In addition, Dr. Nichols and Dr. Anderson were joined by 7 individuals currently enrolled in graduate programs at various institutions and in different stages of their education. They're going to provide you with insight into their individual journeys. Before we get started, I'd like to extend a thanks to Mrs. Carol Brubaker with ASCO for helping with the development of this program. And she's been working behind the scenes to distribute this webinar and organizing all the individuals participating this evening. It's not the webinar format, and so you may have already seen a message there to kind of keep your microphone muted. It would be fantastic if you guys could submit questions that you might have via the chat feature, okay? And I will wait for an opportune time to answer or to propose those questions. So anyway, in addition, and some of you may have joined this evening because of this, there's going to be a drawing for 10 $100 gift cards after the event, and Mrs. Brubaker will be in touch with you as to those individuals who were drawn. So grab this here. And just a little bit of background here. Dr. Nichols received her optometry degree from the University of California at Berkeley, completed a residency in ocular disease at Omni Eye Specialists of Colorado, and earned her master's in public health and biostatistics and PhD in vision science at the Ohio State University. Dr. Nichols has been Dean of the University of Alabama at Birmingham School of Optometry since 2014 and is the co-director of the Ocular Surface Institute at the Clinical Eye Research Facility. She is a leading expert in dry eye disease and has extensively published with over 105 papers, and she is the current president of ASCO. Dr. Anderson is an associate professor and chair of the graduate program in vision science at the Ohio State University. She earned both her Doctor of Optometry degree and PhD in physiologic optics from the University of Houston College of Optometry. She has research funding from the National Eye Institute to study vision correction for patients with Down syndrome and is involved in other collaborative research through the PEDIC group. And her role at OSU combines patient-based research, didactic research, and teaching and mentoring graduate students. So without further ado, if I could advance my slides. What I'm going to do is turn this over to Dr. Kelly Nichols, and she is going to provide us with the story of basically of her graduate degree and where it's taken her. So Dr. Nichols, take it away.
Well, thank you, Dr. Zimmerman and the committee, and Carol Brubaker for planning. It's my pleasure to be with all of you this evening. And I just want to hope that this will encourage you to consider a future degree or a career in academic optometry. I think that there's a lot of benefits to our profession having PhD trained optometrists who can understand the clinical aspects and then decide to kind of incorporate that into their own research portfolios and plans as they work through their career as well. And so you heard a little bit about my background. Go ahead and next slide. I'm going to walk you through kind of where I came from and how I kind of meandered around to get to where I am today. It seems maybe like it wasn't planned, but I sort of feel like every step was a plan as I went through the process. So I was born on the West Coast and went to school in California, and then went to Berkeley for undergrad or for optometry school after undergrad at UC San Diego. So I kind of was a West Coast person and had planned on, kind of seeing some things in externship and such. I had gone out to Denver Omni to do an externship, and I also was on Indian Health Service in Arizona on externship. And I really enjoyed those different environments, and I enjoyed ocular disease. At Berkeley, we had to do a research like project as part of our to graduate from optometry school. And I was fortunate enough to hook up with my grand sib, so my big sib in the class ahead of me's sib, and she was doing a project on babies and stereopsis, which if any of you knew me, you know that that's really not my area, but I attached on with her for this project and was able to finish it in my second year while she was a fourth year. That allowed me to have some free time, I think, in my third and fourth year. I was very involved in AOSA, and I was AOSA national president. So I was always kind of one of those people that was involved in stuff, involved in clubs, and that was really rewarding to me. And so some of the things I want you to think of are what's rewarding to you. So it was rewarding to me to be involved in lots of different things at one time. And in optometry school, I really enjoyed that. Next slide. So here's a few things I'm going to talk about today, and I have kind of a slide for each of these things. When I was in first year of optometry school, I'd been in the UC school system for 4 years now. I'm at UC Berkeley, and I was feeling a little bit tired, as most first year students are, partway through the year. And my public health teacher said, if you're ever thinking about getting another degree, you should do it right after optometry school, because that way you just kind of go continuously. If you stop, you might not ever go back and finish that degree. And I leaned over to my roommate and I said, I am never getting another degree. Well, many degrees later, never say never is what I tell people. You don't know where your path will take you. And so if there's an opportunity for you to try and get a degree and you have any interest, I would say explore it. I told you I was very involved in optometry school, and I think that helps you meet people that might provide the information about their types of practices and maybe what it's like to be an academic optometrist. So ask as many people as you can and follow your passions, and we'll go through that in a couple of slides in a minute. Next slide. So after optometry school, I decided to do a residency. I kind of had thought that teaching in an optometry school someday might be something I wanted to do, and I knew that a residency would help you do that. At this point, I wasn't really thinking about a PhD in vision science, but I knew that I had kind of liked the research project I had done as a optometry student. But I was at a tertiary referral center and I saw a lot of dry eye, and we did a lot of retina stuff. I took all the fundus photography and did the fluorescein angiography. So I was very engaged in kind of retina. At that time, though, there wasn't a lot that optometrists could do to kind of study the retina in terms of the machinery. We didn't have OCT back then. So as I left my residency and was recruited to go get a PhD at Ohio State, I started kind of thinking about what idea I wanted to study, what was my topic going to be. because I did like the retina and I felt kind of limited by my choices. I also then knew that there was a lot of dry eye in Denver. I saw that all the time. So maybe that would be something that would interest me. Next slide. And I got involved then with with a very important organization to me, the Tear Film and Ocular Surface Society. This was on the tail of a paper, which I'll show you in a minute, but there's a paper that was published at the end of my residency and beginning of my PhD that was about dry eye. And it was a white paper, a summary paper about what the status of the field at the time. And so that paper was like a blueprint of research for me. And because then I got involved in dry eye, I met people. And when I met people, I got involved then in the Tear Film and Ocular Surface Society. And they've done a number of white papers called the DEWS reports and the MGD reports over all the years. And so I've had the opportunity, because of this organization, to be involved in kind of crafting what dry eye looks like now. And I've just been able to meet people, fantastic people from all over the world. And so that really is a benefit, I think, of having a PhD in vision science or getting a master's. You just get to meet people from all over the world who are doing the same thing you are and have that same quest for knowledge. Next slide. This is that paper I was talking to you about that came out right when, and that is my original copy there that you see in my hand. Back then, we actually looked at journals that were paper. I know, hard to believe. And so I stole this journal issue from Joe Barr. And he told me eventually that I could keep it, but it was the very first, it was very informative to me. And the things that I'm highlighted there in the conclusion were lots of the first things that I looked at in terms of my master's thesis and then my PhD. Next slide. So since that was, a really important topic in what I saw, I was kind of thinking, well, I would like to do dry eye, I think, as a research topic, because I think optometrists can do this. I've really been fortunate to have great mentors. And my PhD mentor was Dr. Carla Zadnik, and she did myopia research. Now, I didn't do myopia research, but she was very passionate about that. She was also passionate about clinical research. And so she could teach me all this things about study design and how you design studies. And she hooked me up with people who knew about dry eye. And dry eye, then I thought, was something optometrists could really do. And certainly optometrists now really do it. You can't hardly go to a meeting without many papers or many presentations about dry eye. But back in the beginning, there weren't very many optometrists talking about it at all. And so it's been kind of fun to be involved with dry eye since the very beginning of dry eye in 1995. Now, today, there's currently at least 3 therapeutics that are in phase 3 and probably another 10 or more that are in phase 1 or 2, and at least 8 or at least 4 or 5 devices that are in development as diagnostics. And so the field is like exploding. There's been, several approved medications in the last few years, and I know that we'll continue to have more. So it's something that really is a salient topic for optometry. It's something that I felt fit nicely with what I was hoping to do when I started out in the beginning. Next slide. And it's really super important to have mentors. And Dr. Don Corb is really like the grandfather of dry eye, and he's like really the most wonderful man. He and his wife, Joan, are very, very involved in the academy, have been over the years. And I guess it would be fair to say that I'm a bit of a fan of his. And I think it's mutual. I mean, we've shared interests. He's been around for my whole dry eye career, and he'll always ask the really creative and interesting questions. And he's also one of one of several mentors that I have that I'd feel like really have pushed me forward at certain parts of my career. So it's important to find those, and not mentors look different. They come in all shapes and sizes. They're going to guide you through different parts of your careers, regardless if you go to graduate school or not. So it's important to have as many as you can and really rely on some mentors for good advice. Next slide. So being in Ohio for about 16 years, teaching on faculty, doing research, having an NIH grant to study dry eye in postmenopausal women, we were there for a while. I met my husband there. We were married, had kids, and then back in 2011, moved to Texas, to Houston, where we set up a larger dry eye research center. And we thought our lives were going to be there forever. And we were going to, just stay in Texas for a really long time. We spent summers in Australia doing research with people at the Brian Holden Vision Institute. So we broadened our horizons, our kids' horizons, by spending time in another country and doing great research with people from the University of New South Wales. That was a very rewarding period of our lives. Next slide. And I got a chance to start to see some of the benefits of the work I had done. A lot of my papers were being recognized and cited. Next slide. And I felt like some of the early work, which was really important to me, was starting to really kind of be recognized and have an impact. I called it dogma dispelling, because there were several things that were in that first paper that I addressed through some scientific work, where the answers then were kind of basic answers to questions. And you see this in actually a lot of optometric fields related to clinical research. So answering basic questions that people say, oh, I already knew that, or maybe they didn't know the answer to that, and then we're able to come up with the question. So I'm actually most proud of some of the early work that I did, because it really did sort of set the stage, and it answered some of the questions that were in that first white paper. Next slide. But my most proud moment was being part of the international tear film workshop on meibomian gland dysfunction, which I was the chair of the workshop, and I had a chance to work with a big group of people and do a white paper. Actually, it was a whole journal issue of where we were in the field of meibomian gland dysfunction, and that was really probably will always be, one of the things I remember most fondly about my research career. And it's not even really related to the specific science that I've done, but it's really the collaborative nature of working with people around the world on an issue like this. Next slide. So then after that, I was recruited to come to UAB, and I applied to be dean, and I didn't really, I'd always kind of thought I liked leadership. I didn't really think that it would come this early in my career. I had advice from several people that said, well, go and try and see what the interview process is like. And then when the job comes up that you're really most interested in applying for, then that'll be the one that you get. So I really kind of went into the process, kind of just not knowing what was going to occur. And in the end, when I was offered the job and decided to take the position and move here, it was a big step. And so now it's been 7 years, and I couldn't be more proud of the UAB School of Optometry and some of the changes and advances we've made together as a team here at UAB over the years. And leadership is another aspect of a career when you have an OD and a PhD, or OD and some other degree, where you have the opportunity to be a leader at one of the schools and colleges of optometry. And I know you saw from Dr. Zimmerman's slide a few minutes ago that there's a decrease in the number of OD PhDs that are out there. Well, we're certainly going to need OD and other degree combinations to be our leaders at the schools and colleges of optometry. And there are a number of schools and colleges of optometry that are going to turn over deanships within the next few years. And so there's going to be excellent opportunities for those of you out there who have an interest in leadership to think about being a dean or an associate dean or a director of a grad program or something like that at a school college of optometry in the future. Next slide. So there are lots of resources. You're going to hear about a lot of this today, so I don't want to belabor it, but there's loan repayment, which is one of the most wonderful gifts, honestly, that an optometrist who's dedicated themselves to getting a PhD and doing clinical or basic research can have. It essentially will pay off your student loans if you continue to apply for it in renewal. I know many optometrists who have PhDs who were able to use loan repayment to pay off their optometry debt. And it is a wonderful thing to be debt-free finally when you get to that point, and that the government will help you do that is really wonderful. If you're thinking about something like this, going into getting a graduate degree, whether it be a master's or any other type of degree, really think about your personality. There are personality indices out there that you can take to kind of understand who you are and what you want out of your career. I would say that I went into optometry because my family practice, where I was from, introduced me to optometry, and it was a nice office in a healthcare setting that seemed very pleasant. And while that's all true, as I went through optometry school and other things, I realized that sort of doing kind of the same thing every day, all day just wasn't going to be for me. I needed to have more variety in my day-to-day activities. And, learning that about yourself is really important as you're thinking about if this might be a career for you. Regardless of what the topic is, if you do a master's, a residency, a MPH, MBA for that matter, a PhD in vision science, all of those really show a potential future employer that you have committed your time and extra effort to something that not all that many people do. Less than 2% of Americans have a PhD, and certainly not very many have masters either. So if you go on to get an extra degree, it can only open a door for you. A previous president of the Academy, Bernie Dolan, talked one time about a table of 8. And that would be people who he could think of that he would want to have a dinner with, his mentors that had been in his life, important people in his life. And so he suggested that you should start putting together your table of 8 now, and that you should tell people who are at your table of 8 that they mean something to you, essentially, while they're still with us. So I kind of try and think of my mentors like this, that I can add people to my table, but if they're there, I want to make sure that they know that they're important to me and that I appreciate what they're giving to me. And those are really, really rewarding relationships. So ask lots of questions. Anyone and everyone will always answer a question about how they got to where they are and why. I was introduced to the idea of a PhD in vision science when I was AOSA president, and I was at a NBEO meeting with a couple of presidents and deans from other schools, and they said, you might want to consider a PhD in vision science. And I said, what's that? And so they went on to tell me what it was. And I said, why would you do that? And they went on to explain why they thought that might be valuable. And that just put a little nugget that got locked away into my head until later on when I was ready to think about it and really take action with it. So that nugget was there. And later on, I went to realize it was something I really wanted to do. So ask people questions, ask me questions. You can feel free to reach out to me at any time. You have a wonderful panel here tonight who all have great experiences, and you have faculty that are with you that can answer questions too. So I appreciate the time tonight. I don't want to take any more time because it's a wonderful panel. And I thank the planners in this committee, the Academic Affairs Committee, for planning this event. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for joining us, Dr. Nichols. So next up, I'm going to let Dr. Anderson kind of take over, and she is going to explain a little bit more about what each of these degrees means and some of the benefits that those degrees may, or the doors that these degrees may open up for you.
Thanks, Dr. Zimmerman.
I'm trying to advance my slides here. Oh,
one more.
There we go.
All right, so I get the opportunity to talk about what does graduate education really mean. And whether you've heard the verbiage or not, all of you are pursuing a professional degree right now, which is your optometric doctorate, so that you can do clinical care. In the university system, when we talk about graduate education, we're really talking about research degrees. And so I'll go through the differences between MS and PhD in a little bit, but let me start by talking about what research is and why we would need that for optometry. So next slide. I like this illustration because it depicts the research process and the fact that it's continuous. So typically, when we are embarking on research, we've made an observation, maybe it was in the exam room, something we observed about the patients that we just don't quite have all the answers to. And so we start forming questions based on those observations. And we typically come up with what we think might be a reasonable answer. But when you have research training, you can then design a study to explore the potential answer and test whether or not your hypothesis is true. And so you design an experiment, try to eliminate any bias and collect data, and then you analyze that data and you come to a conclusion. But a lot of times the questions that we have are much bigger than one study can answer. And a lot of times the conclusions that we make from the small data set that we have only lead us to more questions, more observations and more questions. And so that's why this is a loop. But ultimately the process does evolve our understanding and get us closer and closer to answering those bigger questions. Next slide. And this is another figure that depicts the process of research that I find even more fascinating after the last year and a half. So this is the pyramid of understanding. And at the base level, we have my opinion. And I don't know about you, but I have seen so many opinions on social media about the pandemic. Everyone has become an expert, and they think that if they observed one instance of one happening, that it is the truth. And the public has started to talk a lot more about research and actually get frustrated with research because they see all of the healthcare professionals seemingly changing their interpretation of what's true and what we need to do. And they don't like that. They don't like to see things evolve. But that's really exactly how things happen in research, because we start out by making observations and forming questions. And sometimes what we have to go on is the base level. It's our opinion or calling the person down the hall. Hey, what do you see when you're in the exam room with your patients? And so we have these personal experiences that we start to assimilate. And as we assimilate all of those personal experiences with others and conversations with others, we start to form what we call expert opinions. And these might be things that you see in CE presentations. It might be things that are used to form clinical guidelines, consensus statements, maybe helping to inform our textbooks. But what we really need is the top two layers here. And the primary literature here is the second from the top. And this might be a single clinical trial where somebody designs a study in a manner to eliminate bias and randomize patients into a treatment versus a placebo and do a well-conducted study to find an answer that hopefully is not fraught with the bias of the person who's conducting the study. And so we get a little bit more of a true finding out of that type of design. But that's just one study. And so it's limited in its impact by who was enrolled in the study, where it was conducted. You can't generalize it necessarily to everyone. And so that's where the top layer of this pyramid comes in. That's so important to be able to synthesize multiple studies. And this is where we really need to get with the pandemic, is to have lots of studies that we can synthesize together, but we were starting from nothing. And so the public has seen things evolve and been frustrated, but that's the natural scientific process. And the more and more independent studies that we have that can then be synthesized into systematic reviews is where we're going to be most likely to find the truth. And this is where our evidence-based medicine guidelines should come from, so that we can be giving our patients treatments and recommendations that are based on large bodies of evidence. Next slide. So who are the researchers in optometry who can help us to gain this evidence? Well, there's a lot of different career paths that you can take. And I think most of us on this call tonight are very passionate about academic optometry. Most of us have that for our career path, and it's certainly a very rewarding one. But there are many different paths that you can take with your research training that will still benefit the profession. So we have clinician scientists who conduct studies with patients, and it may be an observational study where they're trying to learn more about the visual system by doing tests on individual patients. And then we have clinical trialists who will take new treatments and evaluate those in patient-based studies. We have inventors, and inventors could work for companies. They could start their own company. They could be in academic settings. But there are inventors in optometry who are creating new tools. Get this muted. We also need basic scientists contributing to optometric research. You'll hear the phrase bench to bedside. A lot of times the answers have to start in the lab with cellular research or animal-based research. And so we need basic scientists among us as well to get those advancements to where we can actually offer something to the patient. And then military scientists is another pathway that you can take with your career. And we have somebody on our panel tonight who is with the military. And I personally know several optometric researchers who are working for NASA. So that's another career path that you can take. You can also be employed by industry. That could be your sole employer, or industry often will approach faculty and academia to help run studies. And so you'll have partnerships between faculty and industry to conduct research. You can also do research as a private practitioner. I think PDIG is one of the biggest known examples of this. It's a big network of optometrists and ophthalmologists who are interested in pediatric eye health, and private practitioners can join that group and recruit patients through their private practice to be part of those studies. They won't have the bandwidth to do the entire study themselves, but they can see the patients within their practice to contribute to the larger subject recruitment for the study. And then in addition to conducting research, we also need people who have been trained in research to educate future researchers. And so being in academics is going to give you that opportunity to mentor and teach the future members of the profession. Next slide. So why would you want to pursue research? Well, I think Dr. Nichols gave a lot of fantastic examples from her career path, many of which are on this list. This list certainly isn't exclusive, though. I can think of many, many reasons why you would want to pursue research, but it's exciting to make new discoveries, and that's what research is. Another thing, especially when you're in the academic setting, is the ability to have intellectual independence. When you're in an academic setting, there is nobody telling you what topic you have to research. Dr. Nichols went out and discovered that dry eye was something she was passionate about. I went out and discovered that I was passionate about working with the Down syndrome community. So you can really pursue whatever interests you. The only limitation is funding, really. So if you can do things on the cheap, you can research anything you want. If you need more money, though, you're going to have to convince somebody else that what you're interested in is important. And that's where grant writing and persuasion of those study sections comes in. Another great reason to do research is the collaboration and networking. I think you would be hard pressed to find any significant publication that only has one author's name at the top. This is a team effort, and I, as one individual, cannot have all of the expertise it takes to get things done. So I partner with biostatisticians, I partner with computer programmers, and collaborate with other clinical researchers to get the subject pool that we need to get the studies done. So it's a team effort, and that's a lot of fun. We certainly go to a lot of conferences to present our work, and so we like to travel and get that opportunity, and we've been missing that a lot in the last couple of years, so we're looking forward to resuming more of that. It's great to be a lifelong learner and to contribute to that learning by pushing the envelope of knowledge. And it is thrilling to get publications. That is the way that we communicate what we've discovered. I always say, if you haven't published it, it didn't happen. And so getting those things out in publication is very important, but also very rewarding. You also have the potential for a broader impact on patient care. I think the majority of people get into optometry because they want to help people. If you pursue research, you are not leaving that behind. You're only magnifying it, because when you're in private practice, you can only impact the people who walk through your door. But when you do research, you can impact tens of thousands of more people, because the findings that you disseminate will influence the way other people practice and serve their patients. And then, as Dr. Nichols pointed out, there are a lot of leadership roles in the profession that become available to you when you have more degrees, and many, many more things that we could talk about why to pursue research. Next slide. So what skills do I need to pursue research? Well, essentially, you need to be naturally curious and interested in learning how things work. You need some basic organizational skills, and you need a willingness to write. I didn't say you need to be excellent at writing. We can teach you to write. In fact, during your PhD is when most people learn to write. But if you absolutely abhor writing, then you would have to get over that to have a successful research career. Next slide. So let me just talk briefly about master's versus PhD. So a master's is typically a 2-year program, and there are some programs that offer it in combination with an OD. There are also programs that offer it in combination with a residency or a fellowship. And we'll share slides at the end, give you resources to find out where these different opportunities are. A master's degree is going to provide you with a fundamental education in basic research skills. You're going to complete a single project, most likely, and you're going to write up the results of that project as your master's thesis. Typically, at least at the programs I'm familiar with, a master's thesis amounts to one scientific publication. The credit hours from your master's degree can often count toward the requirements for a PhD. So that means that if you do the master's and decide, I really want to keep going, you're able to take those credit hours and apply it to the PhD. So you may be able to shorten the trajectory for completing a PhD if you've already done a master's. The master's gives you an excellent skill set to be involved with industry. It makes you more competitive for positions as a faculty member. It gives you the tools you need to participate in a research team and to conduct smaller independent studies. Next slide. The PhD is typically a 5-year program, but that is plus or minus depending on the individual and the circumstances. But I'll just say it's typically 5 years. It can sometimes be offered in combination with an OD, so you can look to see there might be places that have a joint OD PhD, and some of them allow you to get into that joint program toward the end. So if you're earlier on in your OD, it may not be too late if your home institution had that. Otherwise, people do them sequentially. A PhD is going to provide a deeper education in research skills, and it's going to entail completing a large project or several smaller projects and writing it up as a dissertation. So PhD dissertations usually have chapters, and you'll have results from multiple studies. The PhD is going to open up all the same opportunities as the master's plus more. So by having a PhD, you become more competitive for large research grants. Now, there are exceptions to the rule. I can think of some faculty who have ODMS that have gotten NIH level grants, but in general, having a PhD is going to make you more competitive to get the large scale grants. It's also going to give you the skills to run an independent research lab. And so your position, if you worked in academia, would look a little bit different in that you'd have more of your weekly effort devoted toward research since you're running a research lab. And having that PhD opens all the doors to assume leadership positions within academic optometry and even some of the professional organizations. We have different committees that are based on research within our professional organizations, and they're certainly going to want people with OD PhDs serving in those positions. Next slide. So graduate school versus optometry school is something that our panelists are really going to illustrate for you and talk to you about their personal experiences, but I'm just going to put a few things out there before we get started with the panel. Graduate school is very different from optometry school. First of all, you typically do not pay tuition. And instead, you're usually paid to work while you're getting your degree. And that job is either being an attending or teaching in the labs or being a research assistant. So there's different ways that you contribute to the teaching of that institution, and they provide you a stipend for doing that. And so you're not accruing any additional debt. You also don't sit in class all day. There are credit hours that you have to earn. A lot of those credit hours, though, are independent study performing your research. There will be some courses that you do take, but those courses are typically small numbers of students that are frequently discussion-based and use essay tests or even just participation instead of multiple choice testing. So it's very, very different from optometry school in that regard. For the large part, you're progressing at your own pace, especially with the PhD. And so things will wax and wane as you go through. Maybe it's taking longer to get the study design down, but then once you start enrolling patients, you're going like gangbusters. So it just really is at your pace to get the work done to complete your dissertation. And once you're a graduate student, you become eligible for many awards. And when you hear these bios of our panelists, you'll hear about some of the awards they've received. And some of them are quite significant. and some of them come with a lot of financial support. So I know our panelists are going to delve more into the LRP as well that Dr. Nichols mentioned. Next slide. So my final slide here is, what can I study? Well, you should realize that MS and PhD degrees are offered in many different areas. If you choose to pursue these degrees in an optometry school, then it's likely going to be in vision science, physiological optics, or maybe public health. But we need optometrists with expertise in lots of things. And so if something really appeals to you that's not within an optometry school, it's still going to be very valuable for our profession to have optometrists trained in these areas. So you could pursue graduate degrees in neuroscience, immunology, pharmacology, education. All of these are going to benefit our profession. And I don't want to leave out the other degrees that are also equally important to our profession that aren't necessarily in research. So MBA or law degrees, for example, are skill sets that we need our profession to have represented. And these skills may gain benefit for the individual when they go into practice, such as being able to aid their practice management. But it's also appealing for optometry schools to have faculty with expertise in these areas. And so it will give you more advantage as far as applying for faculty positions. And it also enables you to have a skill set that can help advocate for the profession at large. So thanks for listening, and I'm looking forward to hearing from the panelists.
All right. So basically what we're going to do is spend some time hearing firsthand experience. Just make sure I'm not muted. Perfect. And decided to pursue additional. I'm going to take additional questions from you, the audience, and basically go ahead and just ask me in the chat, and I will politely ask those questions to our panelists. So that being said, I want to introduce our 7 individuals who are participating. And the first one we have is Alice Kim. She studied psychology and as an undergrad at UAB. She is a first-year student at the University of Alabama at Birmingham School of Optometry. And as you can see, she's pursuing her OD MPH program. So UAB, for example, is one of those institutions that has an OD and a master's degree that you can do at the same time. Alice is class president and in student organizations such as NOSA and SVOSH, and is also involved in clinical translational research in dry eye and related ocular surface disorders. She received an early acceptance to UAB's optometry school. So beginning her public health master's coursework was the easy decision. She hopes to use her clinical research experience and training in health behaviors to advocate better evaluation and improvement of public access to vision care. Next up, we have Paul Luttrell. He is currently a second-year student at UAB and is studying toward an MBA during the summers. He grew up in a rural farming community in Lees Creek, Ohio, and earned his BS in neuroscience from the University of Evansville. In his time at UE, he was able to serve as a manager for the basketball teams. Go Aces. Next up, okay, so those two are both students concurrently getting their master's degree. Then we have doctors, ODs who have actually gone on to pursue an advanced degree. So first up is Dr. Tren. He's an active duty Army optometrist currently attending the PhD program at SUNY. And just move this out of the way, maybe. And he received his BA in economics from Dartmouth College in 2006 and Doctor of Optometry from New England College of Optometry in 2011. He works with Dr. Suresh Viswanathan to utilize electrophysiologic techniques to understand the mechanisms underlying visual dysfunction in mild traumatic brain injury. Next, we have Dr. Jennifer Smith. She received her Bachelor of Science from the University of Memphis in 2011 and her Doctor of Optometry from SCO in 2016. She followed that with a 2-year dual residency in primary care optometry while pursuing an MBA from 2016 to 2018. Currently in her 4th year at the University of Houston College of Optometry, she is working on a PhD in physiological optics and vision science as a teaching fellow with a research focus on diabetic retinopathy and identifying some of its subclinical biomarkers in order to prevent the progression of the disease. Additionally, she works part-time as an attending in the family practice clinic at the University Eye Institute. instructing optometry students. She is the 2021 American Academy of Optometry Ezel Fellow. Next, we have Dr. Charlotte Long. She received her optometry degree and residency training at UC Berkeley. She is now pursuing a PhD in vision science at UC Berkeley as well. As a residency trained optometrist, she has research interests in understanding retinal structures and functions at the cellular level in both healthy and diseased eyes. Her research goal is to utilize high-resolution retinal imaging and functional testing with psychophysics to further understand disease development, progression, and prognosis, to advance development of new diagnostic tools, and to improve understanding of disease mechanisms that may lead to novel treatments. She is the 2021 American Academy of Optometry Foundation Ezel Fellow. And our final two panelists, Dr. Kelsey Steele, she actually was my master's student. She earned her undergraduate degree in psychology from The Ohio State University, her master's degree in biology from Mississippi College, and her doctorate of optometry from Ohio State University College of Optometry. She completed a 2-year cornea contact lens advanced practice fellowship and earned a master's degree in vision science. Currently a vision science PhD candidate at The Ohio State University, she serves as a clinical attending in the College of Optometry who participates in original and industry-funded research. She is also a 2-time recipient of the Ezel Fellowship. And lastly, we have Dr. Brianne McGee. She is a residency trained clinical optometrist in New Orleans, where she's a native. She earned her BS in psychology from Xavier University of Louisiana and both her OD and master's in education from Pacific University College of Optometry. She is currently pursuing her PhD in education and leadership at Pacific University, where her research interests are the impacts of educational inequities and inequalities of minority communities. In 2016, Dr. McGee created an outreach group, Elite Youth of Excellence and Service, to provide eye exams and eyewear while mentoring local school and college-age students who are interested in optometry. She was the 2020 recipient of the Women in Optometry Young Optometrist of the Year and the 2021 Merton C. Flom Leadership Ezel Fellow. And I realized with my slide, I believe Dr. McGee actually was awarded her PhD earlier this year. And so congratulations on that, Dr. McGee. So with that, basically, I'm going to ask specific panelists to respond to a series of questions. And I want to begin with Dr. Smith. So Dr. Smith, I'll let you unmute yourself. You not only have your OD, but you also have an MBA and are now pursuing a PhD. Can you describe your journey and the deciding factor that led to your pursuing other degrees in addition to your OD?
Yes, of course. I just want to say thank you so much for inviting me to this panel discussion. Just to start off, I know you kind of read some of my bio, but again, I graduated from the Southern College of Optometry in 2016. And soon after, I decided to do a residency. And again, as you read, I did a dual residency where it was a 2-year residency in primary care at a local nonprofit institution, as well as gaining my MBA at the same time. Basically, during the morning and the afternoon, I would see patients. And even though this was a primary care residency, I did see a lot of pathology. And then on Thursdays from 6 to 10 p.m. every Thursday, I would take coursework for my MBA. At the time, I decided to do this particular residency because I thought, you know, after I'm done, I want to see, maybe I want an administrative role at an institution, be that a optometry school or VA or somewhere else that would allow me to really put forth some of my business skills. But lo and behold, about a year and a half into my 2-year residency, I had a patient that came in who had very severe vision loss and didn't have good ambulation. Their significant other was bringing them into the room, holding the side of their arm, and they said, I have a cataract and I need the cataracts removed so I can see again, which is a little bit unusual for someone to come in like that. But after we looked in the back of the eye, the patient actually had proliferative diabetic retinopathy. And because of the just profound, impact it had on me, and the patient's reaction and some of the other things that happened around that exam, it just really spurred my interest in diabetes and something could have been done, or if there's research that could be done to kind of prevent some of these devastating effects, I would like to know more. So that's what was my deciding factor to pursue a PhD under the guidance of Dr. Wendy Harrison here at the University of Houston College of Optometry. And so far it's been great. And I've had the opportunity to kind of very, 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 very preliminarily answer some of those questions.
Thank you so much. So I'd like to shift over to Dr. Tren and ask the same question. Since the pathway for a military optometrist is a bit different, can you describe your journey and the deciding factor that led to you pursuing your PhD?
Thanks, Aaron. Thanks for having me. So it's I went through optometry school through the military's Health Professional Scholarship Program and became active duty after graduation. And I was stationed in Korea for 3 years and then went to Germany for 4 years. So I was overseas for a bit more than 7 years. Then a lot of times in our military career, after about 6-7 years, we had a dilemma: should we stay in or go out to go into private practice or whatever, or the VAs, or and kind of contemplating really hard of what I should do. But looking back, I really I still enjoy my my military professional experience and serving our great nation and our service members, and I really enjoy that. So I decided to stay. But with the military, it's big on promoting graduate program and leadership development. And in order to progress in my military career, it's good, it should be, to earn another graduate degree, right? So it was either like an MBA, an MHA, or an MPH, or a PhD, and deciding on pursuing a PhD. And I've always been really curious. I always ask the whys or the why not of doing something. So, and I want to understand more about the underpinnings of our clinical decisions and potentially contribute more to the profession and serve more. So, and then also in terms of for the long term, I want to kind of diversify and expand on what Dr. Nichols mentioned earlier, and kind of open more doors in the future. So I think with a PhD, it will potentially open more doors in when I eventually retire from the military. So.
Yeah, perfect. Hey, thank you for sharing that. So let's hear one more perspective on this topic. Alice, you are currently pursuing an OD and an MPH. Can you share with us your journey and deciding factors to pursue the MPH in addition to your OD?
Yes, thank you so much, Dr. Zimmerman. I guess I'll just start and say that I've always had an interest in population health, and this motivation really tied into my personal reasons to go into optometry. So once I found out about this program during my undergrad at UAB called the Accelerated Bachelor's to Master's Program, I took the opportunity. So like Dr. Nichols, I found my passion and involvement through clubs and other leadership opportunities. And the southern region of the US here in Alabama, we definitely see some major health disparities. And I really had exposure to this through some service opportunities and shadowing in some healthcare clinics. And I remember a specific experience at an event called Project Homeless Connect here in downtown Birmingham, which drew in the entire Birmingham homeless and marginally housed population, and to give them free services such as legal services and free food and vaccines. And this included eye exams as well. And here I was just an undergrad kind of thrown in, fitting these strangers for readers. And even though this was such a niche and really specific, a really simple routine, it really exposed me to a new community. So that being said, the School of Public Health here at UAB is consistently ranked amongst one of the best graduate schools in the entire country. So I was really confident that the school will be able to provide me a really robust education to support my understanding of health behaviors and just this impact on the delivery of vision care. So not to mention, I had the great mentorship of Dean Nichols in these endeavors, these professional endeavors and academic and research alike. So seeing her and a lot of other accomplished professionals in this field, the MPH stuck out to me as a really good stepping stone. The coursework that I've already taken, such as epidemiologic methods, community assessment, programs and policies, environmental health, and so much more that I'll take as I progress in my optometry classes. I'm really excited to see how I can apply these skills to real world practice.
Yeah, fantastic. Thank you for sharing that. So I'm sure our attendees are familiar with the course load and type of work that is involved in earning the optometric degree, and some might even be familiar with the process of completing a residency, but graduate school can be quite different. Dr. Wong, you have been involved in all of these. Can you please compare and contrast the OD program with the residency and with graduate school, and how do they differ?
Yes, thank you so much for having me tonight. This is a great question. So I think OD program and residency focus on clinical training. In the optometry program, you take classes and learn clinical skills towards becoming a good clinician. In the residency program, I think the training is more well-rounded. During my residency, I did direct patient care most of the time, also many scholarly activities, including clinical teaching and presenting case reports. I did a lot of literature review on clinical papers when working on my case presentations. So I think my clinical skills, presentation, and research skills improved significantly because of my residency. So I think OD program and residency training can really give you good training in becoming a good clinician and clinical educator. I actually decided to pursue a PhD during my residency training. My residency was in primary care at community health, where I saw patients with retinal diseases, but a lot of things are unknown about disease diagnosis and progression. I wanted to explore more on the photoreceptor structure and function in diseased eyes by using high-resolution retinal imaging that can actually visualize individual photoreceptors, which is why I'm doing a PhD in vision science right now. And I think the PhD program is completely different from optometry school and residency. Our vision science class has only about 6 students with very diverse background. And as Dr. Anderson mentioned earlier, the classes we take are more discussion-based, and we form groups to do projects together instead of studying for exams. So I think doing research is really exciting and also challenging at the same time, because you might be the only person that's studying a specific topic, and you're responsible for doing your own literature review and designing experiments to answer the research questions. Your advisors can guide you, but you're leading your own independent research. You also have to pick up different skills on your own in order to accomplish certain tasks that are essential for your project, such as coding up the experiment and doing statistical data analysis. Lastly, I think in the PhD program, we also have teaching requirements where I was the teaching assistant for certain optometry classes, so we can develop didactic teaching skills as well. So that was my answer.
All right, perfect. So Dr. Steele, you have also completed several programs to include a 2-year advanced practice fellowship that was similar to a residency, but also included a master's degree. How would you compare and contrast optometry school with the advanced practice fellowship and now your PhD curriculum?
Thanks, Dr. Zimmerman. As he already mentioned, he was my advisor for my APF program. So Ohio State has the advanced practice fellowship that, like you said, is kind of a combination residency and master's program. So that's where I kind of had my foray into research. I didn't do any during optometry school. I didn't do any in my undergrad. So if you think research might be interesting to you, but you don't have any experience, that doesn't matter. You could still pursue a graduate degree. As I've progressed in my programs, my independence has increased as the structure of my program has decreased. Dr. Anderson did talk about this a little bit. During my fellowship and my PhD program, I've had to work on time management and organization, but kind of in a different way than in optometry school, because so much of it is self-guided. Though I still took courses in both my APF and my PhD, there was much less traditional studying involved and more writing, literature review, research activities, and self-guided studying. As a self-proclaimed night owl, I appreciate having some more flexibility in my schedule to complete my tasks when I do my best work and I don't have to go sit in a classroom at 7:30 in the morning every day. And the PhD is even more self-guided. And I'm really fortunate to have fantastic advisors that help me prioritize the tasks and keep me online to help direct my focus.
Yeah, perfect. Thanks, Kelsey. So I'm going to next ask Paul to weigh in on that same question. Paul, you are currently pursuing your OD and your MBA. How would you compare and contrast those two programs?
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Zimmerman. So the MBA work is a step less intense, a little more flexible. There's a lot less hard studying and memorizing, and more discussions and reviewing current literature, not so much academic, but more what's going on in the world today and how this would apply to different situations. The other thing is with optometry school, I see the same 59 people every week. And so it's kind of refreshing to branch your network out and build that with some other people. And you get to collaborate on a lot of stuff with them and get to see a lot of different perspectives. Some people have been working 20 years in a certain industry, and so they know it, and now they're just getting their degree. So it's quite refreshing, less intense, more writing, less studying. So.
Perfect. Hey, thanks, Paul. So one of the things, getting more degrees, right, always sounds appealing, but I think the big question for a lot of the optometry students is, what will these do for me, and do I really need it? So let's hear from some of our panelists about what doors or career opportunities might open to them as a result of their additional education. So I'm going to start with Dr. McGee, because sometimes the opportunities are not just for the individual's benefit, but also for the profession's benefit. And Dr. McGee's training is a bit unique in that way. So Dr. McGee, I'll let you unmute yourself there, but what are the opportunities afforded by your degree program, and what goals do you have now that you've completed your degrees?
Thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Zimmerman, and everyone at ASCO for this opportunity. And my pursuits are in education, which is a little bit different from everyone that's on the call tonight. But when I pursued my master's in education at Pacific, it was primarily in vision functional learning. And so my initial pursuit was, I'll just be a pediatric optometrist. I'm getting more information, more doors to be opened, some of the things that were mentioned on this call. But when I was in the program, one of the things that really opened my eyes was how much legislation and policy contributes to education. And as far as regarding your question, as far as some of those doors that have been open, right now, I've been working closely with some of my state and local legislators who are in education and on the education committees for different schools here, working on those policies, because we think that, opportunity in education is fair, is equal for everyone, but that's not true. And also, if you look at healthcare disparities and looking at those social determinants of health, education is usually at the core of that conversation. So when we're talking about patients who may not be compliant, or patients who may not return for visits, or patients who may not understand, or even pediatric patients who may need an IEP, so many things that involves education. Again, it definitely opens those doors for them. Also, I am at Pacific University and working with the diversity task force, working with the curriculum committee, and it has opened up so many doors that way as well. So, but I really do enjoy the education aspect of it. And it does open up pathways for me to work with other disciplines, not just, healthcare, but also other academics and law. I work with people in advocacy, and just being able to sit at multiple tables, not just in healthcare.
You forgot that you get to serve with me on the lectures and workshops committee too. So for the academy, so that's right.
That's true. That is true.
I think it's the hardest, most difficult committee we get to serve on, probably, but most rewarding too.
It is a pleasure for sure.
Yeah, it is. All right, Dr. Smith, please add on with your response and describe the opportunities and goals you have upon completion of your PhD.
Well, one of the things that I feel like is an opportunity that I came into the PhD not really thinking about is I kind of touched on the fact that I was very interested in diabetic eye disease. And so I really thought that's what was going to be my main focus. But what you might realize if you decide to do a PhD is a lot of times you just sort of absorb through osmosis whatever your mentor's expertise is, and you just kind of take some of that on. So my mentor, Dr. Wendy Harrison, actually runs the ERG, or electroretinogram clinic, at the University of Houston. And one of the people who took a huge chunk of those referrals to run ERGs, full field and multifocal, just recently retired. So I was placed in the ERG clinic, and I do that now as well on Friday afternoons, which has afforded me the opportunity to see some very interesting patients that I may not have seen under normal circumstances, like metastatic occipital lobe lesions or visual snow or other things that I feel like are very interesting. So now I have this skill niche that I wasn't ever even expecting to have, that I have now. My goal is probably to use some of this research in both the ERG and the diabetic retinopathy realm at maybe an academic institution or a VA or some other institution with optometry privileges, so I can continue to teach, but also use some of my research skills to push forward some of these preventative biomarkers for diabetic eye disease.
Perfect. Thank you. So Alice, where do you see yourself taking your skills from your combined OD MPH after graduation?
Yeah, so the Master of Public Health is an additional degree, just like kind of comparable to the MBA. So while it might not automatically qualify you for any specific skill set, it does help with providing some awareness and understanding of the larger healthcare system in our country. So of course, all issues affecting optometry today are part of this larger discussion that involves the entire healthcare system. And I think that now more than ever, understanding these systemic underpinnings and these problems in organizations is really important in building our competencies as a future healthcare practitioner. So no matter what practice modality I choose, I know that this dual degree program is going to help me feel more prepared to enter the real world healthcare field. And, now more than ever, there's so many pharmaceuticals and devices and lenses that are being developed really quickly. So there's a lot of research that's going to be needed to assess these long-term effects on the community. So whether it's better equipping me to apply some clinical methods or learn the biostatistical side of things, there's a lot of skills to be learned.
Perfect. Yeah, thank you. So even when getting another degree sounds like a great path, there can be some barriers to overcome in making the decision to take the plunge. And one of those big perceived barriers is debt load. So Dr. Steele, how did your optometry school debt factor into your decision to pursue another degree? And is it financially burdensome to pursue a PhD?
Yeah, that's a great question. Really important question that I get from a lot of my interns if they are considering even just a residency or graduate education afterwards. You have to think about that. So prior to making the decision for myself to pursue a PhD, I did consider the financial impact that decision would have. Luckily, there are a lot of programs, which we've kind of touched on a few of them, but there are a lot of programs out there that support graduate education that can help to offset some of the financial impact. I mean, I'm not going to lie and say that my husband who works in a private practice and I have the same salary. We don't, but there are a lot of other things out there that support us while we're working on our education, knowing that we will have, higher potential earnings when we're completed. So I was awarded 2 residency awards as a fellow and 2 as a PhD student from the American Academy of Optometry Foundation, which includes just cash prizes to have, as well as travel grants to the meetings. You guys heard a couple people talk about the National Institutes of Health Loan Repayment Plan grant, which I am a current recipient of that. And right now I have a 2-year plan that pays $100,000 towards my optometry loans. And then I can continue to apply for that for renewals as long as I have protected research time. As a graduate student, I also have been really fortunate to participate in many paid speaking opportunities, both at conferences and at CE events, as well as paid writing opportunities. And once you kind of get on the lecture circuit, you get more invitations to do things. And once you have a solid collection of presentations, you can kind of update and use them other places. So I did do a little bit of Saturday work during my fellowship. So that's also an opportunity, an option for you guys to supplement income if that's something you're concerned about. But like I said, the financial aspect is definitely something to consider carefully, and that's going to look different for every individual, whatever your family situation is. But know that there are a lot of opportunities out there that can supplement your income.
Yeah, perfect. So Dr. Tren, how does the cost of grad school factor in when you're a military optometrist?
Yeah, sure. So for me, I've been very fortunate and grateful. The military has been really generous to me, and they have a great network, a support network for the families as well. So as an active duty optometrist going through the PhD program right now, it's not a huge financial burden. I get my full military pay and benefits while I'm in school. Obviously, with that, I don't get the stipend that SUNY offers, but I'm not obligated to do the TAs or any research, like tutoring the students and things like that. So, but with the military is that they give you a very short time window to finish your program. It's like usually 3 years, possibly, and a 1-year extension. And also I went through optometry school on the scholarship program, so I have very little debt upon graduation. So that's also fairly beneficial. About the military, they also have a loan repayment programs and also the research programs. The Air Force, I know that we have friends in the Air Force and the Army and Navy and the Coast Guard even, and it's a great opportunity if any of you are very interested. And it's a great opportunity to see the world, to serve our country. So and it's financially beneficial as well.
Perfect. So Paul, back to you. Is there any additional cost associated with the joint OD MBA program?
Yeah, so the MBA program in itself is 30 credit hours, and each of those credit hours are $1,000. So that may sound like a lot, $30,000 extra dollars to people who didn't graduate with any debt. But after you get your MBA, the way I see it is that MBA opens so many other doors to further your career and make that money up at another time. But as far as additional costs besides tuition, besides those $1,000 a credit hour, I haven't had to purchase a book or anything, so it's been pretty straightforward, and you get all the information you need.
Yeah, I think it's kind of in line with the professional. It's sort of an investment in yourself, right? Pay off in the long run. So another major perceived barrier is the thought that you are a lifelong student and that major life events keep getting pushed down the road. Is that true? So Dr. McGee, I believe you are a mother, a recent grad, and run a nonprofit organization. So how did you balance graduate school and I guess life?
It's so crazy what I'm about to say, but life was more hectic when I didn't have kids. So when I was in optometry school, first semester, like, of course, everyone feels like, their life's falling apart. But I actually had my first son, it was really my second year of optometry school. I took a year off from school, jumped right back in. This would have been the the spring semester of my second year, and went all the way through. My third year, going into fall semester of third year, I got pregnant again, and everybody's like, "Okay, Bree, you're fertile Myrtle." But honestly, once I got pregnant, once I had kids, I learned how to balance everything. You hear people say it's not, a sprint, treat it as a marathon. And, you always hear that saying, but you never really understand what it means. And in order for me to balance being a mom and family and just being able to just stay alive and not have my hair all over the place like Cruella de Vil, I had to develop a strategy in order to balance everything out. So I had to treat it like it was a marathon. So instead of doing everything in that sprint, like just trying to study in one night or do everything in one night, I would just do a little bit at a time. And as I was going through my PhD program and master's program and even optometry school, they would say, do a little bit. And it just makes up a huge difference in the end when you're studying for that test and you do sit for that test, or if you're writing a paper and now you have that body of work, and it just takes off a huge load. But I think also on the second part of that question is community. My mom is here. You probably hear my kids in the background from time to time, but grandma's here and it's amazing to have family here in New Orleans. But when I was in Oregon, I was actually up there by myself. So Pacific became my community. And I remember when I had my second son, and I had my oldest son, and I remember I was doing the master's program, which was on Saturdays, and my teachers would allow me to bring them into class with me. And when I had my second son, I remember my classmates and the faculty would bring like supplies over to the house. So everyone pitched in. So I think the idea of community really helped me out when I was in optometry school. And even now it keeps me balanced, but also, you know, just taking time for myself to do things that I enjoy the most. I always say mental health is the best health. So if we're not good in the mental state, it's going to really triculate into everything else. So, but I think overall community, marathon, and just taking care of your mental health.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you. So, Dr. Wong, how would you respond to optometry students who are considering graduate school, but also want to have a life outside of school? How do you find the balance between graduate school, I guess, life?
Yes. So I'm right now in my second year of the PhD program. I'm doing research full-time since I'm done with the classes and teaching. I sometimes teach in the school clinic on Saturdays, but not very frequently. I also have a leadership role in a local society where I organize CE events. So it can get really busy when there are deadlines to meet and scientific talks to prepare. So I really need to pay attention to my own work-life balance because it's easy to spend too much time on work and forget to take a break. Whenever I feel I'm overwhelmed, I feel pretty comfortable talking to my advisors and they're very understanding. Additionally, I really like my flexible schedule as a PhD student. I can actually determine my own schedule as long as work is being done on time. I can decide when I come in to perform experiments and have meetings with advisors, or I can analyze data, read and write at home. So I really appreciate the flexibility, especially during the pandemic, because I can still be very productive at home. As a PhD student, I'm working at my own pace, and the flexibility allows me to do many things in life, such as going to doctor's appointment on a weekday, attending friends or family events. And I can also decide on when I take my vacation days or sick days. So overall, I think the work-life balance as a PhD student is great.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, thank you. Thank you. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to let each panelist have about 30 seconds to share their favorite moments of grad school. And while they're sort of doing that, if you happen to have any questions, please start to write those in the chat and I'll address those. So first up, I'm going to let Dr. Smith share with us her kind of the best part about the grad program.
Best part, there's a lot of things. The best part about the grad program is the variety. Very similar to Dr. Nichols, I can get bored kind of easily. And so it allows me to both do teaching and research. And then I had the coursework and I have a little bit of extra time on weekends to supplement my income and the flexibility. So it allows me to really branch out in multiple spaces. So I always constantly feel excited by the program and challenged by the program. And that's definitely my favorite part.
Perfect. So Dr. Tren, you're up next.
Yeah, just to chime in, yeah, flexibility is key. When I was in the clinic seeing patients, it's like in the military, we start early. It's like 6:30 sometimes, you know, until 6 at night. So the days are long. But I mean, graduate school, it's a lot of work, but you determine your schedule. So that's one thing. And another thing that I really enjoy was the intellectual stimulation. It's like an exchanging ideas with professors and my Dr. Kofrida on my dissertation committee. Yeah, he's like the godfather of binocular vision. So, and yeah, it's been very it's been quite a lot of fun. And pushing the limits of what you know and what you don't know. Sometimes you might have a great idea, but then he'll like knock you down. So, yeah, so it's been a lot of fun.
Perfect. Perfect. Alice, you're up next.
Yeah, so I would have to say that meeting people from different schools when I'm taking my public health coursework is really like a breath of fresh air. Like I've collaborated with people in the medical school, nursing school, you know, people who want to specialize in topics like maternal health, environmental health is really nice. And secondly, the flexibility in the curriculum is great. That same goes for the MS, MBA, PhD programs that are offered at UAB. So when you get to take your courses, I get a lot of advisory, and I just really want to encourage anyone to, you know, seek these opportunities and, you know, talk to your advisors and see what can be done if you have any interest in these kind of degrees, because you never know what kind of shifting you can do in your curriculum and any financial support might be available. And yeah.
Yeah, thank you. So yeah, again, feel free if you happen to have any questions for any of the panelists, feel free to share those. So Dr. Wong, go ahead.
For me, it would be the relationship with my classmates in vision science. Since with such a small class size, we actually become very close and we support and learn from each other. For me, I came into the program with zero coding background, but I actually learned how to code in MATLAB from my classmate who has a psychology background. She helped me a lot when we did a class project together. Now I feel comfortable writing simple codes for my experiment and data analysis. So I think that's the part I enjoy the most.
Perfect, perfect. Kelsey?
I would say the aspect, kind of copy what Dr. Smith said, the aspect I enjoy the most about my program is the variety. I like that I can work with patients one day and then attend in clinics with second, third, or fourth year students. I participate in my own research and industry research and collaborative research. I take classes, I present at conferences and CE events, I TA in labs. Every day is different, every day is a different challenge. And then the other aspect would be the people, because you have so many opportunities to go to different places and meet with different people and collaborate and mentorship. I've made some really great friends and some people that I feel like will be my mentors for life.
Yeah, thanks, Kelsey. Paul?
Yeah, I would have to say just the grad program itself exposes you to so many different people with so many different backgrounds and different perspectives on things that it's a breath of fresh air, and it's great to have. And in addition, it just opens up so many different opportunities you never thought that would present itself just because you're in a class with these people. So definitely the people.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, thank you. And Dr. McGee.
Yeah, just to sum up what some of my other colleagues said about variety and being amongst a cohort of individuals from different disciplines and them, you know, bouncing off ideas and seeing how that can be used in our profession. For example, as I mentioned earlier, with advocacy and law and politics, would have never thought about that had I not bounced those ideas back and forth with my group and them introducing me to a zone that I was not comfortable in, but I was willing to step forward into that zone. So, and of course, the flexibility, being able to be a mom and just do everything else. I love where I can set my own schedule.
Yeah, thanks, Brianne. So it looks like we had a question come in, and I'll read it off, and if anybody wants to take a stab at answering it, feel free. For hypothetical masters in a vision science student wanting to pursue a PhD and also an OD program, are there benefits to the order you obtain these degrees other than loan forgiveness?
I can take a stab at that question.
Thanks,
So
Dr. Anderson.
if I understand the question correctly, this is somebody who's got a master's in vision science and now is trying to decide what order to do a PhD and an OD. If there's an opportunity to do a combined program, that would be one way to do them both at the same time. For the loan repayment, you have to have a clinical doctorate. So from that perspective, yes, it's advantageous to go through the optometry program and then do the PhD program so that you can qualify for LRP while you're a PhD student. But one potential disadvantage to that is that you would gain your clinical skills, and then depending on what kind of a PhD you're doing, if you're not doing anything patient facing, then perhaps your skills would diminish a little bit while you're in the lab. But if you were going to do patient-based research, I don't think there'd be any concern about that. It just depends on the type of research. If you do them in the reverse order though. If you do the PhD first and then the OD, most people are launching from their PhD work into their first grant. And so it's a little bit hard to halt your research and then pick it up again 4 years later. So I think one of the best strategies might be to try to find a dual degree program where you could simultaneously pursue both.
Yeah, perfect. Well, I want to share a few more slides here for those of you on the call. So let me go back to here. And on the ASCO website, pretty much every college of optometry or school of optometry that has a graduate program, you can go and each one is listed and the degrees are also listed there. And so if you're interested in any particular program or particular programs, you can go and explore a little bit and the contact information is there. And I'm not going to leaf through and spend time with all of these, but there's a summary slide here that we came up with the ASCO Academic Affairs Committee that kind of summarizes the programs, the schools that have programs and the degrees that they offer. And you'll notice this is available at the website below or on the ASCO website. So if you wanted to take time and explore, or you're like, oh, you know what, here's all the schools with the PhDs, or here's the schools that offer the masters in public health, et cetera, you can narrow that down quite quickly. So let me see. Okay. And yeah, so anyway, I want to thank everybody for attending this evening. I'm not seeing too many questions come in, but I thought I'd kind of close out real quick with my journey. As I was sitting here, I saw seeing Dr. Nichols and then Kelsey. Dr. Nichols, I remember sitting in fourth year, I think we called it ocular disease clinic at the time. We call it advanced ocular care now because of the ocular disease as a negative connotation or something. It was just sitting next to her and her husband, Jason. Jason was one of the people that spoke with me in my fourth year about possibly pursuing a graduate degree. And I did the 2-year fellowship that Kelsey was mentioning. I just happened to do mine in binocular vision and pediatrics. My whole plan up until basically the autumn semester of my fourth year was that I was going to go back to my hometown and be an optometrist. But I am so glad that I pursued the master's degree, and it has opened so many doors into one, teaching at the university, but also being involved in several different clinical research studies, getting to present at academe, for example, publishing papers, getting to be the advisor of 2 master's students at this point. It's just been fascinating, and getting to work on committees, just things I would probably never have had the opportunity to do. And the other thing too, those of you with these advanced degrees, if you pursue them, you end up being the leaders of our profession. And so, that you have a lot of influence, basically you're going to help steer the profession, whichever direction it ends up going in the future. So let me show you one last slide. And if you want, you could use your phones here and take a photo if you wanted. This gets you to the ASCO website. But with that, does anybody have any concluding statements? Otherwise, thank you so much for joining us. All right, and thank you all for agreeing to be the panelists. Thank you, Dr. Nichols and Dr. Anderson, for helping produce this. And yeah, with that, we're like right on the money at 10:30. And the rest of you, if you're interested, reach out to somebody at your school, reach out to one of us. We're all here to help and answer any questions that you might have. So anyway, thank you so much.